Okay, so like I said, we're gonna look at the different elevations that you all have as well as the sizing needed for that. Like I said, I'm gonna start with the one that's right in the middle. And for that, I'm going to make sure I have a 2 inch uh, or a, what does that come out to again? A 400 foot or possibly 600. So again, I'll just redraw that rectangle. I'll go to my top view. And so if you know that you're in that middle range for your topography, anywhere between over 500 feet and less than or around 1,000, you're going to want your fabrication piece to be somewhere between 2 and 3 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that. So I can just click a point. I'll start around here and say 3,000 for its length. And then let's say 500 or 2.5 inches, since 1 inch equals 200 feet. So here's my rectangle. And like I said, you might have to make it a little bit shorter just so that we get a nice clean trim. And that really doesn't matter because it's all going to get rescaled anyways. But the thing that you should also make sure of is that your bounding rectangle is containing part of that drainage line that you did in the previous part, because we want to make sure that we see how the water is going to flow within that surface. So I like this area. I'm going to make it a little bit narrower this way. So again, I can get everything trimmed away. Maybe I'll shift up. That way I just make sure I have everything showing up. So that looks good. I can see the water comes in over here. So that looks like that should be good enough. So now I'll go to my perspective view. Can lift that up. I'm then going to extrude this curve in both directions to slice away the rest of the model. So now I can select both this and the rectangle, type trim, and get rid of all that excess. So there's our nice clean rectangle. From here, I can now find the border because now we need to actually create or make this a volume. So I'm going to select this, type dupe border. Now you can see that I've got a nice closed curve that's wrapping around it. I'm going to now type project to C plane. Delete input objects, hit no. So now you've got this one at the top and this one at the bottom. So make sure you have both the border that's around your terrain selected as well as this bottom one. Type loft and make sure that these are both in the same corner, else it's going to mess it up. So I'm going to go ahead and click that point and drag it over here. You can even move this so it's not quite. Now you can see they're both in the same corner. They're pointing in the right direction. That should work. And now I see that I've got my vertical walls. The last thing you want to do is actually create a bottom piece to this. So I'm going to select that curve at the bottom and type planar surface. And now I've got it. I don't know why it's not showing up, but I see the crosshairs, meaning there is, in fact, a surface there. So I'm going to select that one. I'm going to select my vertical walls, and I'm going to select my terrain. And now all I have to do is type join. And here is my surface for fabrication. I'm going to go ahead and make a copy of this. I should have probably not used the original, but oh well. So now we have that. The next thing we want to do is actually bring this and rescale it for the laser cutter. So let's go ahead and I'm going to select my surface. I'm going to hit Control C to copy to the clipboard. Go to a new file because, again, the dimensions are completely different. We're now dealing with inches and a scaled model versus real scale in feet. So now I can hit Control V to paste it into this. You can see that's over in the same area that it was before. I'll hit M for move. Just grab somewhere on that and say, bring it to right around this area. And I can even just grab this corner and move it to 0, 0. So it's right at those crosshairs. So now I'm going to scale it to one of the first dimensions we're going to use, which is going to be 15 inches. Like I said before, we're really going to model this at 14.5 to utilize all the space for the laser cutter, but it's easy just to measure it to 15 inches for now. So I'm going to go ahead and start a new layer, use the polyline tool, and draw a 1.25 foot long curve, or in other words, 15 inches. I'm going to draw it out there. So now I've got my reference curve to rescale this to. I can now select my terrain, type scale, click this origin corner and the corner that I'm going to rescale it with. And I can just zoom in until it snaps to that red curve. So there it is. So there's that red curve, and now it's scaled. So now it's actually at 1.5 feet. We're actually going to want to do this in inches now. So I'm going to type units. And instead of being in feet, I'm going to choose inches, hit OK, and hit yes. So now it's actually at 15 inches instead of 1.25 feet. I can just verify that by typing distance and see at the top that it says, in fact, 15 inches. Okay, so now we want to start preparing this for the laser cutter. So again, you're going to contour this at the 1/8 inch thickness, which isn't truly going to be 1/8 thick material. It's going to be slightly smaller than that. Again, Angelo will give us a more precise measurement. I'm going to assume that it's going to be around 0.118 inches thick. So I'm going to stick with one of these new layers. I'm going to select the terrain, type contour, or let's do one more thing. Like I mentioned before, you're also going to have steel threaded dowels to attach this together. So you're going to put two dowels through your terrain, and then you're going to attach some nuts on either side to kind of clamp it together. You're probably going to want to use some glue too to kind of attach some of the top parts of it, but you want to at least have some dowels near the bottom to really kind of secure it. So I want to create two cylinders. And these ones are going to be the ones you're probably going to find at Lowe's or Home Depot are going to be 1/4 inch thick. Again, I'd go there first and get their true dimensions to make sure that these holes that you cut here aren't too big or too small. So I'm just going to click here. It's asking for the radius, so 0.125 or 1/8. Now I'm just going to make it really tall. I'm then going to take that dowel and rotate it 90 degrees. I'm going to make a copy of it. So if I hold Alt and drag it over, now I've got two. And again, this doesn't have to be really scientific. Just make sure that they're at a decent height and go all the way through your model. Okay? So these are kind of your placeholders for those metal dowels. And what you want to do now is use the Boolean difference to actually cut away those holes. So that way when you contour it, it's going to have those holes all in the same location. So I'm going to go over to my Boolean tools and use the Boolean difference. So select surfaces or polysurfaces to subtract from, that's our terrain. Hit enter. Then it's asking what you're using. I'm using these two red cylinders. Hit enter and, uh-oh, did I use the wrong one? Uh-oh. Let's try splitting this. That'll work. So, I mean, the Boolean difference should work. I don't know why it's not working on this one, but we can still fix it. Let's try using the intersection for this one. Or Boolean split. Nope, that didn't work either. So we'll just stick with the traditional split command. We'll just have to manually trim away some of these parts, which isn't a huge issue. But again, it's kind of reading hollow in there, but we actually want it to be solid. So I'm going to type extrude curve, select the curve I want to extrude. So I'll just select these, hit enter, and then I can just kind of snap it to that other side. Oops. Let's try it. I don't want to do both sides. I want to make sure I'm on the same layer. So I'm going to, again, type that and select all these curve fragments real quick. Make sure I can see the other side, hit enter. Then once it snaps to that other side, I keep forgetting to turn off that setting. Extrude curve, so there. So hit enter. Instead, saying both sides, hit no. And there's your solid piece. Do the same thing with this one. Oops, there it is. So I may also do extrude curve and select here. Again, you may or may not have to do this. For whatever reason, it doesn't like my surface, so that's why it's doing that. But now I've got my holes. Okay, so now we can finally contour it. So I'm going to select everything, type join. So now those should also be attached, which is going to help. And now I'm going to, again, I'll go to this different layer, select my object and type contour. Let's see. The one thing you want to do before you actually start doing this is change some of these settings. In this case, we want to join the curves, else they're just going to be fragments. So I'm going to hit yes, and then I'm going to do by contour plane. You could probably do it by polysurface too, but contour plane is going to be a little bit more reliable. So I'm going to click there. Just going to click this bottom corner, make sure I'm perpendicular to it all. And now I'm going to give my distance, which is, like I said, 0.118. And it's going to do its contouring. You can see that it's making sure it gets those circles too, which is nice. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the surface so I can see what those results are. You may or may not have this happen to you, but there's all these curves on the front that we really don't need. I don't know why it's reading that. It's probably because of that loft, but I can just go ahead and delete those for now because they're really not serving any purpose. That's weird, that one right there. So now just select all of those, hit delete. So now you can see I've got my contours for all my laser cuts. There might be some that are slightly detached or some weird thing, so you might have to manually clean up some of that. But now what you want to do is actually start to lay these out. And there's a couple things you want to do. I'm going to provide a script because you can imagine having to manually rotate them, then separate them all. That's going to be a little tedious, right? Luckily, there's a script where we can manually do or automatically do a lot of that. So what I'm going to do, it's going to be a little bit different from the one I created. And again, I'm going to provide this script for you guys so you don't have to worry about it. It's really just about laying it out and being efficient with your space. But this is what we're going to do. So I think this is the only part I want to get rid of, actually. So I also want to draw a box for our laser cut size. So I'm going to draw one that is at the center. It's going to be 30 by 18. And one last thing that I forgot to do earlier, but like I said, we want to make these not truly 15 inches, but 14 and a half. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a line that's 14 and a half inches long. So it's slightly shorter than this. Oops. And then I'm going to make sure I select everything except for that line, type scale. And again, I'm just gonna click it until it snaps to that one. So now it's just resizing it to 14 and a half instead of 15. That way we can get a little bit extra space. So now what you wanna do is actually bring these into Grasshopper. I'm going to, let's see if we can join some of these. Oops, I don't need these ones on the outside. So this is just going to require a little bit of manual cleaning up of it. I have these extra circles out there. Again, there's more than one way to do this. I might go ahead and just select the contours first. So make sure to kind of join all of those. Again, I'm not going to go through that process, but with the script, you can select your closed profiles, say set multiple curves, and where is it? So there's this where it starts to kind of project them down. I don't know, where are these? Oh, so I'm going to attach that part there. I can adjust it so they're all further spaced apart from each other. Again, this is only going to go so far with just kind of keeping them uh, organized. You're still going to have to just manually place them, but now you can see you've got all your pieces laid out horizontally and apart from each other, and now you can just kind of, you can take these. And I'm also going to do the same thing with this rectangle for my cutting space and lay that out as well. So maybe this is like 31. So I can see where those all are. And now I'm going to go ahead and take those profiles, bake them to my layer here. And now I can see that those are pretty close to the edge. So I'll just space them. And that way I can take these two, bring them over. And this does keep them in sequential order. So you shouldn't have to like score. You should just know like, okay, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, and move it down the line. You can organize it however you want, but this way should help maximize your cutting space. Looks like at this dimension, you can get about 6 profiles per sheet. So shouldn't take that many sheets, okay? So that script will help kind of lay all those parts out. So there's that part. So like I said, you also need an acrylic sheet. So what you want to do in the previous part is you're also going to contour this surface vertically. I can see there's this one. So I would recommend doing it at, let's say, 20-foot intervals. Again, this can take a little bit more of your own kind of creative decision making. I'll go ahead and I already did it, but it does take a while. So these ones were done at 10 feet. So you can see it kind of really creates some interesting geometry with the contouring of your terrain. So what you want to do is you're going to also take this. So select those objects, Control C to copy them. Go to this file where everything's being fabricated. Oops, let's make sure we actually copy it. Oops, that's why. So now I can take those contours, move them to this area, and rescale them, just like how we did before. So I could just, let's see. So this is a pain for just trying to manually convert this. I will draw because again, this is in inches and it's at like 3,000 feet. So that would equal 36,000. Does that sound about right? 36,000 inches. Let's try it. 36,000. Yep. I'm just using this as kind of my base point. So I can select all of that. And I know that these need to be, again, at 14.5 inches because that's the width of the other part of the terrain. So again, I'm going to draw a line for my reference, say 14.5, and it's going to be very minuscule, like that big, essentially just a dot. Now I can select all my contours and this square, hit scale, until it snaps to that really small value, which is right there. Yay. And I'll just make sure that I can see here's my 14.5, so I can just get rid of that. Now I'm going to move this to everywhere else. Because I kept everything at like the origin point, I can just select everything, hit M for move, click anywhere on this and say 0, 0, 0. That'll bring it to the origin point, which is way over there. I'll just choose my zoom to select it, so it's all in the same spot. So like I said before, you're going to also engrave this on the acrylic sheet. And so what you want to do is get rid of this part for now. I'm going to take this because, again, it needs to be perfectly flat. I'm going to say project to C plane. I can delete the input. So now it's just perfectly flat, but it's still a contour line. And now, depending on the height of your terrain, you don't want it to start to sit inside of that. And I'll explain what that means. So I'm going to take these contours, rotate them 90 degrees, and bring them close to my terrain. You're probably going to want to insert this halfway through because you're going to have all these layers. And raise it up so that this acrylic sheet is kind of sitting between all those at a different height. And then from there, that's why we want to kind of figure out where it is, because we want to make sure our acrylic sheet is the correct dimension. So we want to make sure that we accounted for this base part, and so we can draw a rectangle from there. I can essentially take that and select it, move it all over as a copy, rotate it back to that 90 degrees, go to my top view, and again, draw a 14. It's good to start off at 14 and pick at that same corner. And then just bring it up until it's pretty much flush with your contour lines. You can be like perfectly flush, or you can give it a little bit of wiggle room like that. You can get rid of this now. Now I can just make sure that this is sized. I'll scale this just manually until it's nicely fit into there. And there you go. So now here's your file ready to etch on the laser cutter with the acrylic. Okay, so you have this part that's going to cut out the acrylic, and then the contour part. Okay. Luckily, and I did this for a reason too, even the tallest sheets, you're going to have about 15 inches of height, right? Probably. It's probably going to be about 15 inches tall, giving you, with the laser cutter, only another 15 inches. Luckily, because this is a perfect square, it's literally just going to take up that entire bed. But half of it's going to get covered. So you're going to have like the top half is going to get engraved with the contours, the other bottom half is going to be just clean, and that's going to get inserted. So